Welcome everyone to this video. In this video, we are going to talk about the two modes of operation of wireless communication networking that are ad hoc mode and the infrastructure mode. We are going to see how these modes operate and compare their advantages and disadvantages with respect to each other. So let's start. As we can see that there are two basic modes of operation, infrastructure mode and ad hoc mode. In ad hoc mode, mobile units transmit directly peer-to-peer. This means that in this mode, if one node has to interact or communicate with another node, it can do with the help of other nodes, but it will not include any other node such as central node, which we will see is a major part of infrastructure mode. In infrastructure mode, if mobile units are there, they need to communicate through an access point that serves as a bridge to other networks such as internet or. So first we will see the brief descriptions of both the modes of operation, and then we will see a detailed description of how these modes operate, and then at last of the presentation we will compare the working and operation and disadvantages and advantages of both the modes with respect to each other. So let's start with infrastructure mode here. As we can see, most Wi-Fi networks that we use in our daily life are deployed in infrastructure mode, as we use the routers or other equipments that work as central node in this operation. In infrastructure mode, a base station acts as a wireless access point hub. So this wireless access point hub is actually what I am talking is the central node, and nodes communicate through the hub. This means that if node 1 has to communicate to node 2, then it cannot directly communicate. That is, node 1 cannot directly call or directly send message to node 2. First, it will send its message to the central node, and only the central node has the ability to direct that message to the destination node. The hub usually, but not always, has a wired or fiber network connection. This means that sometimes in infrastructure mode, there may be use of wireless or wired media at times when whenever which of them is useful. Wireless access points are usually fixed and provide service to their client nodes within range. This means that if there is a certain access point or central node, then if two nodes have to communicate with each other, they need to be present in a required range around that wireless access point. Well, the nodes which we are talking about are actually the laptops and the smartphones which we use to send or receive messages, which are also known as wireless clients. These wireless clients, there may be case that they are within the range of more than one central node at the same time. So these clients may be connected to more than one access point or more than one central node at the same time. So this was the infrastructure mode. Now we are going to see a brief description of the working of ad hoc mode. Okay, so ad hoc mode. An ad hoc mode network is a network where stations communicate only peer to peer. Peer to peer means that if there is a source node and there is a destination node, so if source node has to send some information to the destination node, it will make the use of only the intermediary nodes present between the source node and the destination node. There will be no involvement of the central node or access points as we saw in the previous case that was in the infrastructure node. So as we can see is written here, there is no base and no one gives permission to talk. No one needs to ask for permission. No one needs to give some permission to talk. All the nodes are equal and they can talk based on their own judgment. This is accomplished using the Independent Basic Service Set (IBSS). A peer-to-peer network allows wireless devices to directly communicate with each other. Wireless devices within the range of each other can discover and communicate directly without involving central access points. This method is typically used by two computers so that they can connect to each other to form a network. As we discussed this, that if one node needs to communicate with another node, the only requirement is that both nodes, if they are in within the range of each other, then they can directly interact with each other. But if they are outside the range, then the source node and destination node will make the use of the intermediary nodes which are present from source to the destination. Now we will see a photo which will make our concepts more clear. In this picture, we can easily see what is the difference between the ad hoc mode and the infrastructure mode. In infrastructure mode, there is an extra hardware needed, that is access point, and all the other nodes need to be in the range of access points to communicate with each other. But in the ad hoc mode, if only the nodes are within range of other nodes, they can easily communicate with each other and there is no involvement of the access points. So moving forward, we will talk more about the ad hoc mode operation in detail, and similarly we will do this for the infrastructure mode, and after only that much of detailed description of both the modes we will be able to compare between these two operations. Networks consist of a collection of wireless nodes that communicate over a common wireless medium. The nodes communicate without an infrastructure such as base station or central node as we saw in the earlier cases, wired access points etc. The establishment of networks must be in a distributed and decentralized manner. That is, the power is not centralized to a common central node here. All the nodes have equal power. Therefore, the complexity of the networks is in the node self. The nodes must be able to solve network problems such as routing and security. Despite the technical challenges, the interest of the ad hoc networks increased rapidly in the recent years because they support mobility and are very well suited for many difficult situations such as rescue mission, military, vehicular communications, etc. The nodes are equipped with wireless transceivers that don't need any additional infrastructure such as base station or wired access points, etc. Therefore, each node does not only plays the role of an end system but also acts as a router that sends packets to desired nodes. Now, moving forward, the ad hoc are expected to do assignments which the infrastructure cannot do. Ad hoc networks are mostly used by military, rescue mission team, etc. As we saw earlier. Their works can't rely on an infrastructure's network. As an example, imagine firefighters put out hazardous fire in a big forest. They have to communicate each other, but establishing an infrastructure or cabling in such area is impossible or too expensive. The main problem in ad hoc networks are routing and characteristic of wireless communication. In infrastructure's network, a node can communicate with all other nodes in the same cell. In ad hoc, a node can communicate only with nodes in its own area. This node can communicate with other nodes, but a routing algorithm is necessary. Unlike wired communication, wireless networks have transmission problems with data transmission such as possibility of symmetric connections and higher interferences. Now we will see the motivation behind ad hoc mode. The main and the one of the original motivations for ad hoc mode is managed, and it is found in military need for battlefield survivability. In the battlefield, the soldiers have to move freely without any of the restrictions imposed by wired communication system. They still need communication device so they can report their position, gathered information, and communicate with other soldiers. For this purpose, they can't rely on an infrastructure because this will bound them to a certain range. In some regions, such as the desert, jungle, mountain, there is no torrential communication infrastructure. Therefore, they have to establish networks without infrastructure, and ad hoc networks, especially manets, support this case. The interest of manets increases rapidly in recent years because ad hoc supports mobility and higher self-organizing in the networks. The commercial application have already implemented manets concept to some device such as PDA, mobile phone, laptop, etc. Another application is to help improving education in developing countries. The children's machine, one laptop per child program, etc. Now we'll move further and describe the advantages and disadvantages of ad hoc. There are many reasons better to use ad hoc than infrastructure. The biggest ad hoc's strength is its independency from any infrastructure. Therefore, it is possible to establish an ad hoc network in any difficult situation. The following are the advantages of ad hoc networks. First one is no infrastructure and lower cost. We don't need any infrastructure for ad hoc mode to operate. So it's also lower in cost. Mobility. Ad hoc facilitates higher mobility as compared to the infrastructure mode. The power is decentralized and the operation is quite robust here. It is easy to build and spontaneous infrastructure. But on the other hand, there are also certain disadvantages of the ad hoc mode. That is, there is higher error rate as compared to the infrastructure one, lower data rate, dynamic topology, and security is also an issue in ad hoc mode. The detailed description of the working of infrastructure mode of operation. As we already discussed, then in this mode there is necessity of an extra hardware that is known as access point or central node for the proper functions to take place, as we can also see here. In infrastructure mode, wireless devices can communicate with each other or can communicate with a wired network only when one AP is connected to wired network and set of wireless station. It is referred to as basic service set BSS. An extended service set is a set of two or more BSS that form a single subnetwork. Now we can also see setting infrastructure mode network requires at least one access point, that is at least one extra hardware. The AP and clients must be configured to use the same network name. So we can see that there are some complications involved here for the proper operation. In the infrastructure mode of networking, all the nodes are connected to the access points for successful communication to take place, and these nodes must be present within a fixed network. This we have discussed over and over again, so we need not discuss all these points. So moving forward, there is a comparative analysis of both the modes. Ad hoc mode is better within a certain distance. Infrastructure is better beyond a certain distance. After adding routing in ad hoc mode, which is better depends on routing protocol. Ad hoc mode is better than infra mode because infra mode transfers a packet two times as long as ad hoc mode. Also, we can see that ad hoc networks are very fast. Throughput rates is almost twice in ad hoc as compared to the infra mode. Compared to ad hoc wireless networks, infrastructure mode offers the advantages of scale, centralized security management, and improved reach. Wireless devices can connect to resources on a wired local area network, which is common in business settings. More access points can be added to improve congestion in the infrastructure mode. Further, the disadvantage of infrastructure mode is the additional cost of AP hardware. As we are talking that in infrastructure mode, there is always a need of an extra hardware, that is the access point or central node. For the installation of that extra hardware, we need extra cost. Ad hoc networks connect to devices in a peer-to-peer manner. This means that all the nodes itself, they are central nodes. They are acting as central nodes, so we don't need that extra cost. In short, infrastructure mode is typical for long-lasting or permanent implementations of a network. Homes, schools, and businesses don't usually use the P2P connections used in ad hoc mode because they are too decentralized to make sense in those situations. Ad hoc networks usually exist in short-lived moments where we need them temporarily, but in the case of infrastructure mode, we use them in case where we need them for permanent settlement. Okay. These are some keys on the basis of which we will discuss the about which one is better: infrastructure, mobility, scalability, routing, and security. So this is the table that we will discuss. In the infrastructure column, all we can know that ad hoc mode there is no need of infrastructure, but in the infrastructure mode itself, the basis is infrastructure. Mobility, there is no constraint on mobility in the ad hoc mode. We can roam freely, but in case of infrastructure modes, we need to roam along within the range of nearest access point. Risk of failure. In ad hoc mode, all nodes are equal. So there is no central node. So there is low risk of failure. But in the infrastructure node, if one of the node, that is central node, fails, whole system collapses. Similarly, scalability. If number of nodes increases, we need to increase number of access point also in the infrastructure mode. So it will increase the cost more and more, which is not the case in ad hoc mode. Now the conclusion. Both modes of operation of wireless communication networks are useful in different scenarios, and both have their own specifications useful under different situations. We cannot use infrastructure mode in war or military, and we cannot use ad hoc mode in area where number of users is very less. So all we can say that both of them have their own weaknesses and inefficiencies under special conditions, but the other one is there to cover those weaknesses and vice versa happens. So thank you for watching this video. Thank you.